What if everything we know about human civilization is wrong? Deep beneath Antarctica's eternal ice, NASA satellite imaging has detected the impossible. Perfect geometric lines forming a massive pyramidal structure where no human construction should exist. When a classified international team descends to investigate, they discover not just a monument, but a message. Precise astronomical calculations predicting catastrophic climate shifts, advanced technology beyond modern capability, and evidence that this isn't humanity's first attempt at civilization. The pyramid contains proof that advanced human societies have risen and fallen repeatedly throughout Earth's history, each time leaving behind repositories of knowledge for survivors to rediscover. As the structure begins to activate in response to their presence, the team faces an impossible choice: bring this revelation to light and risk global panic, or become complicit in the greatest scientific cover-up of all time. Meanwhile, worldwide weather patterns are already beginning to match the pyramid's ancient predictions, suggesting that whatever cataclysm wiped out previous civilizations might be happening again, right now. The screen blinked 3 times before stabilizing. "Doctor." Marcus Reed's fingers froze mid-air, his breath catching in his throat as the satellite feed crystallized into focus. Something impossible stared back at him from beneath Antarctica's eternal ice, perfectly straight lines emerging from the white expanse like a geometric specter. His pulse hammered in his ears, drowning out the soft hum of the NASA monitoring station. "This can't be right," he whispered to the empty room, the words forming a small cloud in the air-conditioned chill. The 3 a.m. shift at Goddard Space Center was supposed to be routine: satellite mapping of ice formations, climate data collection, nothing more. But what the Terra 9 satellite had captured during its sweep over eastern Antarctica defied explanation. Reed's hand trembled as he adjusted the resolution, hoping the image would dissolve into natural formations. Instead, the geometry only sharpened. A massive triangular structure with precise proportions, partially exposed where recent ice shifts had peeled back Earth's white blanket. His mouth went dry. Archaeological discoveries weren't his department, but Reed recognized the implications instantly. Nothing man-made should exist in Antarctica's depths. The continent had been uninhabitable for millions of years. Yet there it was, undeniable in its artificial symmetry. The monitoring room's blue light cast shadows across his suddenly pallid face. Sweat beaded at his hairline despite the cold. His finger hovered over the emergency protocols button, knowing once pressed, there was no going back. For 5 seconds, he hesitated, a small eternity where he was the only human alive who knew. He pressed it. Within 40 minutes, the room filled with personnel in rumpled clothing and grave expressions. No one spoke above a whisper, as though the satellite image might hear them. Deputy Director Calloway leaned forward, his knuckles white against the console. "Verification?" he demanded, voice tight. Reed nodded, bringing up 3 separate scans. Triple-checked against geological formations. The symmetry is precise to within 2 centimeters. He swallowed. "It's artificial." The image traveled upward through security clearances, like a stone dropping through dark water. By dawn, it reached Johnson Space Center's Situation Room, where men and women who made world-altering decisions gathered around a table designed for nuclear contingencies. General Harlow's weathered face betrayed nothing as he studied the projection. Representatives from 5 nations sat in tense silence, allies on paper, rivals in reality. The American general finally spoke, his voice like gravel. "How deep?" "Approximately 1 kilometers beneath surface ice," answered the British geological advisor. "But there's a thermal anomaly suggesting a vertical shaft." The Chinese delegate leaned forward. "The structure's dimensions?" "Base approximately 920 meters per side, larger than Giza, perfectly aligned to cardinal directions." Silence fell again, heavier than before. Each person calculated angles no one dared voice aloud. Political leverage, scientific prestige, military advantage. The Russian representative's fingers tapped once against the polished table. "There are no indigenous civilizations in Antarctica," he said, stating the obvious, while implying the impossible. "Then who built it?" asked the French minister. No one answered. The question hung in the air like a physical thing. General Harlow finally broke the silence. "This cannot leave this room," he said, each word measured. "Not yet." Disagreement flickered across faces, but remained unspoken. The pyramid, for that's clearly what it was, represented too many unknowns. Markets could crash, religions could fracture, security paradigms could collapse. "We need eyes on the ground," Harlow continued. "A multinational team, limited knowledge basis, scientific cover story." The choreography of international secrets began. Names were proposed, vetted, approved, or discarded. Specialists whose curiosity outweighed their judgment. Scientists with security clearances. Military personnel with scientific backgrounds. Meanwhile, in his small apartment, Dr. Reed sat motionless at his kitchen table, staring at nothing. He'd been sent home with strict confidentiality orders and a security detail parked outside. The image of those perfect lines beneath the ice had burned into his retinas, visible even when he closed his eyes. Something waited down there, something that rewrote history. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Dr. Reed," came a voice he'd never heard before. "How would you feel about visiting Antarctica?" 3 days later, military transport helicopters cut through the pristine white sky above Antarctica's Vostok region. Inside the lead chopper, 8 specialists from different nations avoided eye contact, each already assessing the others. Dr. Reed pressed his forehead against the vibrating window, watching the endless white landscape scroll beneath them. The archaeologist beside him, Spanish-born Javier Salvatierra, leaned closer. "They tell you anything about what we're looking for?" Reed hesitated, feeling the weight of multiple eyes suddenly upon him. "Climate anomalies," he answered, the lie bitter on his tongue. Javier's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. Climate." He turned away, but not before Reed caught the knowing look. They were all here under false pretenses, each suspecting the others knew more. The helicopter banked sharply, and through the window Reed spotted the Russian research station, their staging point. Metal structures jutted from the ice like the skeleton of some massive beast, half buried. Vostok Station, the coldest place on Earth, would be their last contact with the known world. What waited below the ice wasn't on any map, wasn't in any history book. As the helicopter descended, the wind picked up, whipping ice crystals against metal with a sound like screaming. Nature itself seemed to be warning them away. Inside Reed's pocket was a small drive containing the satellite image, his insurance policy. Whatever they found down there, he had promised himself that the truth wouldn't stay buried, regardless of what governments decided. Some discoveries belonged to humanity, not to those who controlled them. The helicopter touched down, snow billowing around them. As the rotors slowed, an unnatural silence descended. Reed felt it in his bones. They stood at the threshold of something that would change everything. The pyramid waited below, patient as it had been for untold millennia. The door slid open, admitting a blast of air so cold it burned. The first step onto Antarctic ground felt like stepping onto another planet. Or perhaps Reed thought with a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature, like stepping into another time. Vostok Station stood against the Antarctic desolation like a condemned man's last stand, rusted, defiant, and clinging to existence. Dr. Reed stepped from the helicopter's relative warmth into air that crystallized his breath instantly. The cold here wasn't merely temperature, it was an active predator. Inside the station, claustrophobia replaced the vast emptiness of the ice shelf. Narrow corridors with peeling paint led to a central operations room where condensation froze in rivulets down metal walls. The international team shed their outer layers in silence, sizing each other up with sidelong glances. Colonel Harding, the American military liaison, spread maps across a scratched steel table. His movements were precise, economical, a man who'd learned that wasted motion could cost lives. "Ground-penetrating radar shows an access point 2 kilometers east," he announced, voice flat as though discussing lunch options. "We'll deploy tomorrow at 600. Javier Salvatierra, the Spanish archaeologist, leaned forward with barely contained excitement. Dark circles beneath his eyes betrayed sleepless nights, spent reviewing satellite images against historical records. His career, once promising, had withered after his controversial papers on pre-classical maritime civilizations. This discovery was his resurrection. The thermal readings, he pressed, pointing to anomalous patterns in the data. They're not random. Look at the distribution. It's mathematical. Dr. Mei Lin, the Chinese astrophysicist, snorted softly. Her skepticism was a cultivated shield. Pattern recognition in random data is a common psychological fallacy, she said, though her eyes lingered on the readouts longer than necessary. Reed noticed her fingers tracing invisible calculations on her thigh, a nervous habit of a mind that never stopped computing. "We're not here to theorize," Harding cut in. "We're here to investigate and classify." His gaze swept the room, landing momentarily on each face, measuring loyalty, commitment, weakness. "Whatever we find remains classified until joint governmental approval." That night, the winds rose to a screaming pitch. The station creaked and groaned under the assault, metal contracting in the cold. Reed found Javier in the communications room, hunched over historical climate data, his breath making small clouds in the frigid air. "You don't believe the cover story either," Javier said without looking up. Not a question. Reed hesitated. "I saw the original images." Javier finally raised his eyes. "Then you know what we're really standing on." He slid a worn journal across the table. Inside were drawings, geometric structures beneath ice, mathematical relationships, ancient star charts. The Russians found something in '83. It was buried, literally and figuratively. Before Reed could respond, the door opened. Mei Lin entered, stopping when she saw them together. Something flickered across her face. Calculation, suspicion, interest. "The expedition team from '83, she said quietly. 3 members never returned to base." The 3 scientists stared at each other, unspoken questions hanging between them. Outside, massive machines growled to life as the drilling equipment was tested. The sound vibrated through the station like distant thunder. Morning arrived without the sun, Antarctica's eternal night cloaking the convoy as it moved across the ice. 6 tracked vehicles crawled eastward, searchlights carving tunnels through darkness. Inside the lead vehicle, Reed studied the team. The Russian geologist Petrov, white-knuckled and silent. The French glaciologist Rousseau obsessively checking equipment, Colonel Harding watching everything, saying nothing. They arrived at the drill site as simulated dawn broke across their headlamps. Wind-sculpted ice formations stood like sentinels around them. The drilling platform extended its hydraulic stabilizers with mechanical groans. 3 kilometers to target depth, the operator announced. The first core samples came up black. Not ice, not rock, something else. Under Mei Lin's microscope, the material revealed properties that defied conventional categories. "It's engineered," she whispered, professional skepticism crumbling. "The molecular structure is deliberate." When the drill finally broke through to the void beneath, a rush of air escaped from below, ancient atmosphere releasing after millennia of containment. Reed felt it against his face, neither warm nor cold, but wrong somehow. Different. Colonel Harding made the call. "Send down the probe." The camera descended into darkness, transmitting images to the silent team. At first, only blackness. Then, as lights activated, geometric precision emerged. Walls that met at perfect angles, surfaces unmarred by time. And finally, the unmistakable lines of a passage, a corridor heading deeper into Earth. "Someone made this," Rousseau stated the obvious, voice trembling. "Someone was here before us." Harding's face remained impassive, but his order revealed everything. "Prepare the descent team." The descent mechanism hummed with mechanical strain as it lowered the team into darkness. Reed's breath fogged inside his thermal mask, each exhalation a reminder of his mortality, against the ancient stillness surrounding them. The shaft walls transformed with each meter, from jagged ice to something else entirely, a material both metallic and stone-like, with surfaces unnaturally smooth. "Temperature stabilizing at 4 degrees Celsius, reported Rousseau, studying his instruments with furrowed brows. "Impossible at this depth." Mei Lin pressed her gloved hand against the wall. "This material absorbs thermal energy." Her scientific certainty wavered, betrayed by the slight tremor in her fingertips. It's not conducting heat, it's processing it. The shaft continued for precisely 103 meters before opening into a horizontal passage. Their headlamps cut through pristine darkness that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. Colonel Harding stepped forward first, protocol overriding caution. His military-issue boots made no sound against the floor, as if the structure itself absorbed all acoustic energy. "Stay together. Document everything," he ordered, voice tight with controlled tension. The corridor extended with mathematical precision. No deviation in width or height, no imperfection in the joins between surfaces. Reed's scientific mind rebelled against what his eyes witnessed. Construction techniques beyond modern capability, preserved in conditions that should have destroyed any structure over time. Javier moved with reverent steps, fingers tracing angular patterns embedded in the walls. "These aren't decorative," he whispered. "They're a written language, a mathematical one." Reed noticed Harding touch his sidearm at this pronouncement, a soldier's instinctive response to the unknown. 20 minutes into the structure, they encountered the first chamber. Perfect hexagonal space, ceiling rising to a precise point. In the center stood what could only be described as a console, geometric planes rising from the floor in configurations suggesting function, not form. Petrov, the Russian geologist, broke protocol first. Before anyone could stop him, he approached the central structure. "Look at these markings." His accent thickened with excitement. "They match astronomical alignments from approximately 12,000 years ago." Maylin's skepticism crumbled visibly as she verified his assessment. The precession cycle of Earth's axis, perfectly mapped. Scientific curiosity overrode her caution. "This isn't just a record, it's a calculation." As they documented the chamber, Reed noticed something disturbing. The surfaces, while appearing pristine initially, showed subtle signs of previous human contact. Fingerprints preserved in microscopic deterioration patterns, scuff marks exactly matching modern boot treads. "We're not the first team here," he stated flatly. Silence fell. Each member processed the implications differently. Harding's jaw tightened. Military intelligence had missed something critical. Javier's eyes gleamed with vindication, his career-destroying theories suddenly validated. Maylin calculated new variables, trust deteriorating with each revision. "The 1983 Soviet expedition," Petrov admitted reluctantly. "There were rumors—" "And you didn't think to mention this before." Harding's controlled tone barely masked fury. The fracture lines between nations deepened instantly. American suspicion, Russian defensiveness, Chinese calculation, European uncertainty, unified purpose splintering under the weight of international rivalry. Deeper into the structure, the walls transitioned from astronomical notations to what appeared to be climate models, precise depictions of Earth's atmospheric conditions across millennia. Ice ages, warming periods, catastrophic shifts, all documented with impossible accuracy. "These aren't predictions," Javier realized aloud. "They're observations. Whoever built this watched Earth's climate transform repeatedly." The implication hung heavy. A civilization sophisticated enough to create this structure had witnessed global climate cycles from a position of advanced scientific understanding, long before recorded human history began. The corridor suddenly widened, opening into a vast chamber that their lights couldn't fully illuminate. The team stood at the threshold, peering into darkness that concealed something massive. Their light beams caught only edges, suggestions of geometry on a scale that defied comprehension. As they prepared to enter, the structure shuddered, a subtle vibration that traveled through the material beneath their feet. Equipment readings spiked momentarily, then returned to baseline. "Seismic activity," Rousseau suggested. "No," Maylin contradicted, studying her instruments. "The disturbance originated inside the structure." Reed felt it then, the unsettling sense that the pyramid wasn't merely a relic. The precise temperature, the energy absorption, the preserved condition after millennia, all suggested active systems rather than passive architecture. Harding made the call. "We continue forward, but from now on, no one touches anything without authorization." The unspoken reality settled over the team as they prepared to enter the main chamber. Whatever this structure was, it might not be entirely dormant. The main chamber expanded before them like a cathedral of impossible precision. Their combined lights struggled to reach its full dimensions, creating pools of illumination in an ocean of darkness. At the center stood a raised platform, a perfect square elevated exactly 1 meter from the floor, its surface covered with intricate engravings. "It's a map," Maylin whispered, her scientific detachment crumbling further as she approached the platform. Russo adjusted the team's portable lights, positioning them to illuminate the central structure. Under proper lighting, the platform transformed, the engravings captured and redirected light in ways that created three-dimensional projections above its surface. Constellations appeared, rotating slowly in perfect representation of Earth's celestial view. "This is Earth's night sky," Javier confirmed, eyes wide with realization. "But not our sky." He pointed to specific star alignments. "This configuration, it's from approximately 15,000 years ago." Colonel Harding circled the platform with measured steps, his military bearing at odds with the academic wonder surrounding him. He paused at what appeared to be a control interface, geometric indentations arranged in precise patterns. "Don't touch anything," he reminded the team, though his own fingers hovered centimeters from the surface. Reed studied the star projections, connecting patterns to his astronomical knowledge. "These aren't just decorative. They're marking specific stellar events, supernovas, alignments, orbital changes." His voice tightened. "And they correspond precisely with major climate shifts in Earth's history." Maylin's scientific skepticism reasserted itself temporarily. "Correlation doesn't imply causation." "Unless they knew it did," Petrov interjected. The Russian geologist had been suspiciously quiet, documenting everything with his specialized equipment. "These markings, they're identical to engravings found in Siberian caves dated to the last ice age." His admission came reluctantly, revealing information that had clearly been withheld. Harding's head snapped toward him. "What else hasn't Russia shared with this expedition?" The fragile international cooperation fractured further. Accusations and denials filled the chamber, echoing strangely against walls that seemed to absorb sound rather than reflect it. Reed turned away from the escalating tension, focusing instead on the map's details. Something about the projection's mathematical precision disturbed him. It wasn't merely observational astronomy. The calculations suggested prediction capabilities beyond modern science. "It's not just recording past events," he realized aloud, interrupting the diplomatic standoff. "It's projecting future ones." The team fell silent, professional curiosity momentarily overriding national interests. Reed traced the projection forward, following its mathematical logic through time. The star positions shifted, celestial mechanics playing out across millennia until a specific configuration appeared, one that looked disturbingly familiar. "That's our current sky," Javier confirmed, checking against modern astronomical data. "And this next sequence..." His voice faltered. The projection continued its forward march through time, showing a series of alignments leading to a specific astronomical event. Accompanying these projections were Earth climate models showing temperature fluctuations, ice coverage, and atmospheric composition. Maylin's scientific detachment dissolved completely as she verified the calculations. "These predict a major climate shift within the next 50 years, she stated, voice clinical despite the tremor in her hands. "More severe than anything in recorded history." Colonel Harding's radio crackled suddenly, the signal distorted by the structure's properties. He stepped away from the group, speaking in hushed tones. When he returned, his expression had hardened further. "We've been ordered to collect data and prepare for immediate extraction," he announced flatly. "This site is being recategorized as a strategic asset." "Strategic?" Javier challenged. "This is the most significant archaeological find in human history." "It's more than that," Harding responded, eyes cold. "It's a predictive model that confirms classified climate projections our governments have been suppressing for decades." The truth hung between them. The pyramid wasn't just a historical artifact, but potentially a survival manual left by a civilization that had faced similar catastrophes. Whoever controlled its information controlled humanity's preparation for what might be coming. Reed noticed Harding checking his weapon again, more deliberately this time. The military man's priorities were shifting visibly, national security now overriding scientific cooperation. Similar calculations played across the faces of the other team members: Russian caution, Chinese assessment, European uncertainty. The unified scientific expedition was transforming before Reed's eyes into something more dangerous. Competing agents with conflicting agendas, trapped 2 kilometers below the Antarctic ice with potentially civilization-altering information. "No one's going anywhere until we understand what we've found," Javier stated, positioning himself between Harding and the map platform. The standoff began. The standoff dissolved not through resolution, but necessity. A distant vibration traveled through the structure, momentarily disrupting the star map's projection. The team exchanged alarmed glances as equipment readings fluctuated wildly. "The structure is responding to external stimuli," Mei Lin announced, checking her instruments. "Temperature variations are increasing throughout the pyramid." Colonel Harding's hand moved away from his weapon, pragmatism overriding immediate concerns. "We continue documentation, but no one transmits findings without clearance." The fragile truce established, they expanded their exploration into adjacent chambers. Reed accompanied Petrov down a narrow corridor that branched eastward. The Russian's demeanor had changed subtly, less scientific curiosity, more deliberate documentation, as if searching for something specific. "The Soviet expedition found something else here, didn't they?" Reed asked directly. Petrov's pace faltered slightly. "I was authorized to say only that they reached the structure." His accent thickened with stress, not what they discovered inside. They entered a smaller chamber where the architectural precision remained flawless, but the contents froze them in place. Embedded in the walls, preserved in a transparent section of the material, were human figures, not skeletons or mummies, bodies preserved with such perfection that they appeared merely sleeping, suspended in the wall material. Their features were unmistakably human, yet subtly different: higher foreheads, deeper set eyes. Their clothing was rudimentary, animal hides stitched with precise patterns that matched certain wall engravings. "Impossible," Reed whispered, scientific training warring with the evidence before him. "These remains would be, at minimum 15,000 years old," Petrov confirmed, documenting meticulously. "The dating matches ice core samples taken from surrounding material." The implications staggered Reed. Human presence in Antarctica, predating all known civilization, preserved with technology beyond modern capability. "How many people know about this?" "Very few." Petrov's expression darkened. The 1983 team's leader went public with preliminary findings. He was institutionalized within weeks. Severe paranoid delusions, they said. Reed studied the figures more closely, noting how they were positioned, not randomly trapped but deliberately placed, their postures suggesting they had entered the material willingly. "They look like they're running from something," he observed. Petrov nodded grimly. "The question is, what were they fleeing that made them seek refuge inside these walls?" When they rejoined the main team, they found similar discoveries had occurred in parallel exploration. Rousseau had located chambers containing preserved plant specimens, species that couldn't possibly have grown in Antarctica within the timeline of human civilization. "It's a repository," Javier theorized, excitement overriding caution. "A record of Earth before the last great climate shift." Mei Lin had focused on the wall engravings, applying her astrophysical expertise to their mathematical components. "These aren't just astronomical observations," she concluded. "They're warnings. Specific stellar alignments correlated with climate disasters." Her tablet displayed a timeline extrapolation that matched the star map's projections. Cyclical climate catastrophes occurring approximately every 13,000 years, with precision that defied coincidence. Colonel Harding received another radio transmission, stepping away from the group. His return brought tension back to his shoulders. "Satellite shows unusual weather patterns forming above our location," he reported. "Extraction team is on standby." "We can't leave," Javier protested immediately. "We've barely scratched the surface of what's here." "That's not your call," Harding countered. Reed noticed something troubling during their exchange. Scuff marks on the chamber floor that didn't match their team's movement patterns. Fresh disturbances in dust that had settled over millennia. "Someone else is down here with us," he stated quietly. The revelation silenced all debate. Headlamp beams swept the chamber, suddenly threatening rather than illuminating. The perfect acoustics of the structure made silence absolute. Any intruder could be meters away, invisible beyond their light perimeter. Harding drew his sidearm, military training engaging instantly. "Security Protocol Alpha," he ordered. "Pairs only, regular check-ins." As they regrouped, Reed caught Mei Lin studying her tablet with unusual intensity. She angled it away when she noticed his attention, but not before he glimpsed what appeared to be transmission data, unauthorized communications. The pyramid's subtle vibration increased, mechanical systems activating deeper within its structure. The temperature continued rising incrementally, the first concrete indication that the discovery had triggered automated responses. "It's waking up," Javier whispered, voicing what they all felt. The question no one dared ask hung between them. Was the pyramid designed to preserve knowledge through catastrophe, or to survive whatever caused it? The vibrations intensified overnight, disrupting sleep and fraying already strained nerves. Reed woke to alarms blaring through their makeshift base camp, established in the entrance chamber. Red emergency lights cast blood-like shadows across walls that seemed more alive than inanimate. "Communication equipment's down," Rousseau reported, frantically checking connections. "And the primary access shaft has shifted. It's narrowed by 30%. Harding took command instantly, barking orders with military precision that barely masked growing concern. "Pack essential equipment. Prepare for emergency ascent." Chaos unfolded as the team scrambled to salvage crucial data while abandoning less vital instruments. Reed noticed Javier quietly downloading star map data onto a personal device, concealing it inside his thermal gear. Across the chamber, Mei Lin performed a similar operation more overtly, her government-issued equipment capturing everything within range. A thunderous crack echoed through the structure, and the floor beneath them shifted perceptibly. "The pyramid is reconfiguring itself," Petrov observed with scientific detachment that failed to hide his terror. The thermal readings indicate mechanical systems activating throughout the structure. Harding's radio crackled to life unexpectedly, the first external communication in hours. The transmission came fragmented, distorted by the structure's properties, but the message was clear enough. Immediate evacuation ordered by all participating governments. Something was happening on the surface. The colonel made a tactical decision. 2 teams. Rousseau, Petrov, Lin. Secure the ascent path. Reed, Javier, with me to retrieve the core samples from Chamber 3. As the groups separated, Reed caught a glimpse of something unsettling. Harding secreting what appeared to be a small explosive device into his equipment pack. The military man's priorities had clearly shifted from documentation to destruction. In the star map chamber, they found devastation. Equipment lay shattered, data cores missing, the central platform dark and unresponsive. Someone had systematically destroyed their research station. "Who did this?" Javier demanded, voice breaking as he surveyed his ruined work. Harding didn't respond directly, instead checking corners with his weapon drawn. The Russians knew more than they admitted. "The Chinese have been transmitting unauthorized data. Even your European colleagues have separate directives." "And what about American interests, Colonel?" Reed challenged, new suspicion coloring his perception. "Were you sent to share discoveries or contain them?" The confrontation might have escalated, if not for another violent tremor that sent them sprawling. The pyramid's reconfiguration accelerated, walls shifting with impossible fluidity, corridors realigning. The structure's responding to the sabotage, Reed realized, watching geometric patterns flow across surfaces like liquid mathematics. "It's protecting itself." They rushed back toward the extraction point, only to find the corridor had sealed completely. Alternative routes revealed similar blockages, the pyramid systematically cutting off escape paths. When they finally rejoined the others, accusations flew immediately. Petrov blamed American interference. Mei Lin suggested Russian sabotage. Rousseau pointed to evidence of Chinese duplicity. The international cooperation that had brought them together dissolved entirely, replaced by national survival instincts. The extraction shaft is still viable, Harding announced after checking readings, but it's narrowing by the minute. We need to move now. As they gathered remaining equipment, Reed noticed Mei Lin examining wall engravings with peculiar intensity. These sections reference what they called the silence cycles, she translated quietly. Periods when civilization vanished, then restarted. Ice ages, Javier suggested. No. Her voice dropped further. Something worse. The engravings say humanity has risen and fallen multiple times, with only these repositories preserving knowledge between cycles. The revelation chilled Reed more than Antarctica's eternal winter. If true, it meant human civilization had achieved technological sophistication multiple times throughout Earth's history, only to collapse repeatedly, with only fragments of knowledge surviving in structures like this pyramid. Another violent tremor interrupted the realization. Support beams groaned as the ascent shaft began closing more rapidly. "Go now or die here," Harding ordered, abandoning any pretense of collegiality. As they scrambled toward the narrowing exit, Reed glanced back at the pyramid's inner chambers. The structure wasn't just a repository or warning system, it was a survivor of whatever cataclysm had reset human civilization before. And if its activation now meant anything, perhaps that cycle was beginning again. The final tremor struck as they reached the shaft, collapsing supports and separating the team. In the dust and confusion, Reed lost sight of several colleagues. When visibility returned, only half the team remained. "The others?" He coughed. Harding's grim expression provided answer enough. The pyramid had claimed its first victims. The surviving team members huddled in the remaining stable section of the access shaft. Reed, Harding, Mei Lin, and Javier. Rousseau and Petrov were gone, either buried in the collapse or trapped in sealed chambers below. Emergency lights cast harsh shadows across faces, stripped of professional masks, revealing raw fear beneath scientific detachment. "The extraction equipment is compromised," Harding reported after assessing their situation, his military bearing faltering for the first time. "Surface communication is still down. We're on our own." Reed checked the structural integrity of their position, finding it precarious at best. "This section is stabilizing, but the pyramid's reconfiguration continues elsewhere. It's like an immune response, isolating intrusions." Mei Lin sat apart, frantically analyzing data on her tablet. Her fingers trembled visibly as she enlarged certain sections of the star map they'd documented. "The alignment accelerates," she murmured, more to herself than the others. "The timing matches historical extinction patterns exactly." Javier paced the narrow confines, archaeological professionalism crumbling under claustrophobic pressure. "We need to go deeper, not escape," he insisted, desperation edging his voice. "The final chamber, the one we glimpsed before the collapse, it contains the complete record. You're suggesting we move further into a structure that's actively trying to kill us?" Harding's incredulity carried an edge of hysteria. "It's not trying to kill us," Mei Lin interrupted, looking up from her calculations. "It's trying to protect itself. There's a difference." The distinction hung between them, significant yet unclear. Reed reconsidered their experiences since entering the pyramid, the selective collapses, the pattern of chamber ceilings, the preserved specimens. A theory formed, disturbing in its implications. "The structure's not just a repository," he ventured. "It's selecting what survives." Silence followed this assertion, as each processed its meaning. Harding checked his watch obsessively, military training focusing on immediate survival rather than theoretical implications. "We have approximately 4 hours before our oxygen recirculation fails. Extraction is the only priority." "And then what?" Javier challenged. "Return to the surface with fragments of knowledge. Let governments suppress discoveries that could prepare humanity for what's coming." He gestured toward Mei Lin's calculations. "If she's right about the cycle, we're already running out of time." The moral weight of their position crashed down upon them. 4 people trapped beneath Antarctica with potentially civilization-saving knowledge, choosing between personal survival and information that might prevent global catastrophe. Harding's radio crackled unexpectedly, weak signal breaking through interference. The transmission was fragmented but unmistakable. Surface conditions deteriorating rapidly, unexpected weather patterns forming worldwide, extraction window closing. The climate system was already destabilizing. "It's starting," Maylin whispered, terror replacing scientific curiosity. Just as the Pyramid predicted, the colonel made an executive decision. "We split up. I'll attempt to clear the extraction path with remaining equipment. The rest of you," he hesitated, duty warring with humanity, "document everything you can. If I secure escape, I'll signal. If not..." The unfinished sentence required no completion. Harding disappeared down the compromised access tunnel, leaving the scientists to their impossible choice. Reed turned to the others, decision crystallizing through fear. The central chamber. If the pyramid is what we think it is, a survival mechanism from previous civilization collapses, then its core will contain information critical for rebuilding afterward. Assuming anyone survives to rebuild, Maylin countered darkly. They navigated partially collapsed corridors, following architectural patterns that seemed to guide rather than obstruct their progress. Reed noticed that certain passages remained pristine, while others had completely sealed. The structure appeared to be creating a specific path. The final chamber opened before them unexpectedly, vast and undamaged despite surrounding destruction. At its center stood an elevated ring of the same mysterious material as the walls, angled precisely toward an opening in the ceiling that stretched upward beyond sight. A beacon, Javier realized, approaching reverently. Designed to transmit information skyward when activated. Maylin confirmed his assessment, checking alignment calculations. It's positioned to broadcast data into space when specific stars align, creating a record that survives even if Earth doesn't. The implication devastated them. The pyramid wasn't built to prevent catastrophe, but to ensure knowledge survived it. Its creators had accepted civilizational collapse as inevitable, a cycle beyond prevention. As they documented the chamber's contents, Reed discovered activation mechanisms, controls designed for human operation. The pyramid required conscious choice to fulfill its function. The ethical burden crushed down upon them. Activate the beacon, accepting the cycle of destruction while preserving knowledge for future recovery. Or refuse, maintaining hope for prevention despite overwhelming historical evidence. Time slipped away as they faced humanity's most profound choice, one that previous civilizations had apparently faced before. 6 weeks after the Antarctic incident, a military helicopter touched down on the tarmac of a remote airfield outside Berlin. Medical personnel rushed forward with a stretcher, extracting a single survivor. Javier Salvatierra, the Spanish archaeologist, his eyes hollow with trauma, skin pale from weeks in medical isolation. His medical chart listed severe hypothermia, traumatic shock, and persisting delusions. Dr. Elena Richter, chief psychiatric consultant for the European Intelligence Division, watched from her office window as they transferred him to the secure wing. Her orders were precise: evaluate his mental state, determine what actually happened beneath Antarctica, and assess the credibility of his claims. Inside the sterile interview room, Javier sat motionless, staring at patterns only he could see in the institutional white wall. When Richter entered, he didn't acknowledge her presence. "Dr. Salvatierra," she began professionally, "I'm here to help you process what happened during the expedition." His response came slowly, voice cracked from disuse. "They're all dead." Harding, Reed, Maylin, Rousseau, Petrov. His fingers traced invisible geometric patterns on the table. "But that doesn't matter now. Nothing matters except the beacon." Richter maintained clinical detachment, despite the chill his words sent through her. "Tell me about the beacon." "It was activated." His eyes finally focused on her. Reed figured out the mechanism before the final collapse. "We documented everything, transmitted the data upward through the pyramid's broadcasting system." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Ironic, the same function it was built for, preserving knowledge through extinction. And where is this data now?" "Everywhere." His finger jabbed at the ceiling. "The pyramid sent it to specific orbital points where it would survive regardless of what happens on Earth." the same way previous civilizations preserved their knowledge. Richter made non-committal notes, following protocol for delusional patients. And you believe previous advanced civilizations existed? Believe. Another hollow laugh. The evidence surrounded us. The pyramid wasn't built by aliens or gods. It was built by humans, versions of us who reached technological sophistication before being reset by the same cycle we're entering now. Outside the facility, dark clouds gathered unnaturally, part of weather patterns that had baffled meteorologists worldwide for weeks. Climate systems were behaving erratically, exactly as the fragmentary reports from Antarctica had predicted. The governments know, Javier continued, watching her reactions carefully. That's why they're suppressing everything about the expedition. They recovered Mei Lin's body with her data intact. They have Reed's preliminary analysis. They know what's coming, they just can't stop it. Richter's professional mask slipped slightly. And what exactly is coming, Dr. Salvatierra? The silence. His voice dropped to a whisper. The periodic reset that's wiped human civilization clean multiple times throughout Earth's history. We found the pattern, celestial triggers for climate cascades that collapse ecosystems within decades. He leaned forward suddenly. But this time, we've activated the beacon. Knowledge will survive even if we don't. In her classified briefing, Richter had received fragments of information, unusual astronomical alignments accelerating, climate models failing to predict current patterns, governments worldwide implementing contingency protocols disguised as routine security measures. Where are the expedition's findings now? She pressed. Buried again. Javier's momentary clarity faded, his gaze drifting back to invisible geometries. The pyramid sealed itself after broadcasting. Perfect self-preservation, designed to outlast whatever comes next. His fingers sketched star patterns on the table. They'll find it again in the next cycle, when ice retreats once more. The beacon ensures the knowledge transfers. The interview concluded with Javier prescribed heavy sedation. Richter's official report classified him as suffering from traumatic psychosis, his testimony deemed unreliable. The case was officially closed, the Antarctic incident attributed to equipment failure during routine climate research. 3 days later, an anonymous data package arrived at the desk of a minor science reporter at the Berlin Chronicle. Fragments of astronomical calculations, climate predictions, and blurred images of geometric structures beneath ice. The reporter began preliminary research, curious but skeptical about claims of ancient civilizations and climate cycles. Within a week, the story was quietly reassigned. The reporter transferred to sports coverage. The data package disappeared from digital archives. Official channels remained silent about Antarctica, about weather anomalies, about astronomical alignments matching ancient predictions. Months later, as climate systems continued their unexplained destabilization, Javier Salvatierra was transferred to a permanent care facility in the Spanish countryside. His room had a single window facing south, toward Antarctica, though none of his caretakers recognized the significance of his insistence on the specific orientation. Each night, he traced star patterns on his window, mapping celestial movements with mathematical precision impossible for someone supposedly lost to delusion. He tracked the accelerating alignment, counting down to what he called the silence. And somewhere beneath Antarctica's eternal ice, the pyramid waited, its message already broadcast to orbital points where it would survive whatever came next, preserving the cycle of knowledge for whoever remained to rebuild afterward. The silence approached just as it had before. As our journey through the Antarctic pyramid comes to a close, we're left to wonder about the silent witnesses buried beneath ice and time. What would you do if you discovered evidence that humanity's story was not a straight line of progress, but a cycle of rise and collapse? Would you, like Javier, fight to preserve the knowledge even as institutions moved to suppress it? Or would you, like those governments, decide that some truths are too devastating for the public to bear? Perhaps the most haunting aspect of this story isn't the pyramid itself, but the recognition that we may be approaching our own silence, a reset that has claimed civilizations before us. The true horror lies not in the unknown, but in the patterns we refuse to see, the warnings we choose to ignore. History doesn't always advance. Sometimes it simply repeats, with only fragments surviving to whisper cautions to those who come after. If you found yourself disturbed by this possibility, perhaps that discomfort serves a purpose. Unlike the characters in our story, we still have time to choose a different path. Remember to subscribe for more explorations into history's darkest corners and the mysteries that challenge our understanding of the world. Share this video if you believe some truths, however unsettling, deserve to be preserved rather than buried beneath the ice of indifference.